All right, hello, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to speak about this extraordinary panel that we have this evening. I am honored to welcome this esteemed panel to discuss the need for oversight of the Arizona Department of Corrections and the upcoming legislative session. We are privileged to be joined tonight by House of Representatives Judiciary Committee Chairman Walter Blackman. Mr. Blackman, thank you for joining us this evening. And we have former representative and current candidate for Arizona Attorney General Diego Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And tonight's panel will be moderated by Julie Gunnigle, the legal director of the Poor People's Campaign of Arizona. Julie, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
And we are deeply grateful for you all joining us this evening to have this conversation about ADCRR Oversight. I want to extend a big thank you to everybody who submitted questions ahead of tonight's event. The questions were really excellent. While our guests have historically worked on a number of very important criminal justice reform bills throughout their tenure, that we know that many of you have followed closely and worked very hard to try to get past. Tonight's event will focus specifically on oversight legislation and what we have upcoming, and we've had it in the last two cycles, legislative cycles. We've had legislation up for this, and so this will be the third cycle that we get this extraordinarily important legislation up for a vote. We hope that you take away from this event that nearly every issue within the Arizona Department of Corrections, including many that you've submitted inquiries about ahead of tonight, can be improved or even remedied with independent oversight. And that will be some of the conversation that we have this evening. So without further ado, I would like to hand this over to Julie Gunnigle, who will moderate our panel. Julie?
My goodness, thank you all so much for joining us. And it is no exaggeration, these questions are good. But first, I would like to our panelists who have been so generous with their time, hit them with the softball question. From a legislative perspective, why is it that Arizona needs legislation to create an independent correctional ombudsman? And I'll direct that first to Representative Blackman. Sir, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks for having me. And Representative Rodriguez, it's always good to see you. My partner in crime on criminal justice reform and judiciary, and best of luck to you in your run. So the reason why we need it, I mean, I'll get 20 to 30 letters a day from family, from inmates, from people who work in the system with a myriad of different problems that are going on in the Department of Corrections. It's important for us to have this type of legislation, overwatch, so we can fix the system. We can't improve the system if we don't know what's broken. So the AG's office just did an internal audit on the DOC, and I've been combing through that. And there are a lot of issues in there that we already knew that they existed, and then we're going to tackle this session.
It's wonderful, thank you. Representative Rodriguez, why is it from a legislative perspective that Arizona needs to create this new office?
Oh, I just think time and circumstances are really dictating what needs to happen right now. The department has never had really outside oversight, and it has become so large and so unresponsive, and quite frankly, involved in so many different types of scandals and just inefficiencies, and also just outright tragedies. I mean, the list is long. Are we talking about inmate suicides? Are we talking about inmates who are dying as a result of poor medical care? Are we talking about correctional officers who are wearing a patch on a state-issued uniform that has Nazi symbolism on it? It literally is a $1.4 billion agency that doesn't answer to anyone. If it doesn't answer to anyone, then how is there any way of knowing what is truly going on? And it just quickly, as an aside, I would like to also say hello to Representative Blackman and wish him luck in his congressional race as well.
Well, so to add on to that, one of our next questions has to deal with how it is that legislators even get information from a historically opaque agency, right? There have been several requests from legislators to the Department of Corrections to answer for issues that are brought to their attention one way or another. And the question tonight is usually the answers from DOC are vague and sometimes they're untruthful. What will it take to get accurate information from the Department of Corrections so that we can actually know what's going on and hold the appropriate folks accountable? I suppose it seems fair to go to Representative Rodriguez first.
Thank you. Number one, I think the creation of the Oversight Committee, I think, is going to give great weight to it. You will have subpoena power. So in other words, you just ask the agency voluntarily, will you provide us with this information? If they say don't, if they say no, then what then happens is a subpoena is issued with force of law behind it. That is more along the lines of what happens with congressional oversight. And that is what should be happening here at the state level as well. There's no reason to hide any of this. This should all be transparent. It should all be open to the public. In rare cases, you may have instances where an agency is going to claim that it is something that has to do with the safety of its employees or the privacy of its employees or something along those lines. But for the most part, the operation of the department, its decision-making process, who is getting earned credits, who is not getting earned credits, where the money in the commissary is going to, where it's not going to, that should all entirely be transparent and producible.
Thank you, Representative Blackman. Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, you know, Rodriguez, he nailed it. Oversight, that's where we're going to get the information. And particularly an independent oversight committee needs to do that. So they can have that subpoena power and they can go in and they can ask for those and get those questions answered that we need. Also, DOC is getting ready to have a review and they're going to come to my committee. And these are some of the questions that I'll be asking them. And then based on the answers that I get, will depend on how I rule on whether or not, how far I want to extend out their time to get funding. They need to have a comprehensive look at their programs. We got to look under the bed, we got to look under the mattresses, and we've got to open the closet doors to find out what's going on in there. They are a rogue organization, and they have run shotgun through at least the 3 years that I've been there. And we're talking about taxpayer dollars. I mean, $1.2 billion of taxpayer dollars are going to the DOC, and we are still broken and being sued from outside agencies because of things that they have not fixed, that they were mandated to fix, and that we haven't been able to have a clear vision on the steps to correct some of those problems. So the Oversight Committee is a committee that's going to be able to get to the bottom of it. And I am working that issue pretty hard this session to get it pushed through the House and the Senate, and hopefully the governor will sign it.
That's beautiful, because the next question is, what is an ombudsman? How does this actually work, and will it work to rein in what you so perfectly called the rogue organization that has become the Arizona Department of Corrections?
So who's that?
I think it's you. We can do this less formally too. I just want to make sure everybody.
No, that's fine. I don't want Rodriguez to come chase me because I jumped on this stuff.
No, that's your turn. It's your turn.
Okay. So what the ombudsman does, it's an independent ombudsman. So the way I envision it, and I've spoken to Representative Rodriguez about this, is that I want the ombudsman to have the unilateral authority and not have to answer to anyone except for the legislative body that are making the legislation to improve these things. Because if we have an answer to the director, if you put it in the director's office of DOC, that person may be forced or coerced or what have you to show a different opinion or a different side of what's going on inside an independent. So I want the person to be independent, a separate office with complete access to the governor, and to be able to go to the governor and to the speaker and to the president of the Senate with some of these issues that are hitting the papers and that are it's really hurting our state. So that's what I envision ombudsman to be.
I think it's a great way of looking at it. You know, what we're really trying to get at is an office or a person that someone can go to, either an inmate or a correctional officer or someone involved in the system that they can go to. They don't have to. They can go outside of the chain of command, which is very insular, which is well known for covering its own tracks. We need to get the issue removed. Once it's identified, the issue will be removed from the DOC apparatus over to the ombudsman, we'll then have the staffing and the resources to investigate these things. And then, of course, the committee will come in and offer support and issue the subpoenas, as I said, or the requests for records. We'll have an outside review process. So really, it's just, if you can think about it in this way, it's the first level of oversight before it gets back to the legislature. And if it's done correctly, what you'll have is a system that is present, it answers quickly, because, for example, if someone has to go through one of us, well, in my former position in the legislature, if someone would write us a letter, there's a process that we go through. It takes a little bit of time. And quite frankly, it could go faster, but just the size of our bureaucracy, it doesn't. And Ombudsman cuts that process, that waiting period down, gets them more quickly to the issue. They'll eventually develop their own contacts within the agency, their own methods for investigation. And it'll be a more effective manner of making sure that things are done properly within the agency. Because quite frankly, the agency doesn't answer to anyone right now. It only answers to its own internal policies. In my opinion, the governor has not done enough to pay close attention to what is going on in DOC. If he did, I don't think we'd be dealing with this litany of issues that we're dealing with. And just as an aside, I don't think we'd be looking at medical care being taken away from those private vendors. And I predict that Judge Silver will probably appoint a receiver for the medical care in DOC when she makes her ruling.
I think that's a really important point. And I think we're going to circle back, because I know there's been a ton of questions from the perspective of incarcerated folks as to how they can bring up grievances and what this process will actually look like when the rubber hits the road. But one of the other questions that's come up from a couple different people is that we know that right now DOC is understaffed, and we recently heard that morale is at an all-time low. And I suppose the question then is, do you think that independent oversight will have an effect with issues surrounding correctional officers as well? How will that work?
Well, I believe so. I mean, based on the audit report from the Auditor General, they have several vacancies, not just in the CEO capacity. They have vacancies in their programming, vacancies in management, vacancies in administration. They have vacancies across the board. So until we fill those vacancies and we find out what's going on with those men and women that are working at DOC, we're going to continue to have this problem of a broken system. It's like a big ship. It's like the Titanic. We know what happens at the end. It's going to sink. And we're on that path. And if we don't change course, if we don't fix this, we're going to have more to worry about than just broken locks or being sued. We're going to have some real issues in our state. The incarceration rate right now is a little bit over 35,000. And some folks, the hawks on the right, will say, well, that's good. You know, we're doing great. No, we're doing terrible. The only reason why we're at 35,000 is because of the COVID, and they had to get some of those folks out of the system, out of the prison. The problem also is that those people that work there, they are getting paid like they're working at Burger King. So we need to turn that position into a profession rather than I'll just go work at the DOC because I don't have anything better to do.
You know, that's a great question, Julian. I will tell you, I'm just going to read from the draft language from the bill. The corrections ombudsman may provide oversight of any department investigation relating to the well-being, treatment, discipline, or safety, or any other matter that concerns a person who's in the custody of the department or who's employed by the department. It's really what the ombudsman is going to do is give people a way to chase a resolution that is fair and just, right? To seek that. Because right now, I can tell you the internal process in DOC is what they determine it to be. Whether you're a CO or whether you're an inmate, it just isn't getting the job done. If we are losing correctional officers because of either pay or number two, their low morale, then we need to look into that. And that's something that an ombudsman can help look into. So the creation of this position, the creation of the committee, I think is going to clearly increase the amount of transparency and accountability. And that can only be a good thing. Because if you want to be a professional, if you want to go into this as a profession, which is how Mr. Blackman has stated he aspires to have the position become in the future, then you need to be able to trust the process, that the process itself is a professional. And so transparency and accountability have to be made part of that.
Well, and to add on to that, the question then becomes, how do you build trust with a process that has been historically untrustworthy? And in particular, you don't need to look much further than the testimony at Parsons to hear about how incarcerated folks feared retaliation for testifying, and how COs and other whistleblowers within the department faced retaliation, harassment, and in at least one case, tragically ended their own life as a result. What do we do to make sure that people are using this office and can trust this office is truly independent and that they won't face that level, which is, a very valid fear in this current climate?
Well, there's always a danger of what's called when the oversight is captured by the agency. So that's always a possibility, right? So where the agency just becomes so large or becomes so skilled in politics that it ends up hijacking the very body that's designed to oversee its conduct. An example of that would be what people accused APS of doing with the Corporation Commission. And so what you have to focus on is clear legislation that gives clear directives to what is going on. You also have to be very careful in who you're putting into those positions. I mean, you can't just put any random person into these positions on either the committee or in the actual ombudsman position. You need to know someone who it has to be someone who has experience, who has an interest, perhaps even has a family member involved in the system. I mean, there are a lot of things we can do to increase the quality of the product is going to be based on the quality of the input, right? So we already know what the issues are. So now we need to have solid professional people, qualified people put into these positions who actually care about this. Because like any other bureaucracy, any other government issue, at the end of the day, at some point we have to just trust each other that the other person's going to do their job and they care about equity and justice as much as you do. That's where we're going to go with this.
Look, the first thing I think we need to also do, we need to change the culture. Until we change the culture of what's going on there, we're going to continue to have these issues. We can pump millions and billions of dollars into the DOC. However, if we don't change that culture, we're going to continue to go down the same path of not succeeding and falling short of our expectations and taxpayer expectations. Look, when I was in the military, we had an equal opportunity advisor. That equal opportunity advisor likens to the ombudsman, was outside of the chain of command. And when somebody went to that advisor, they were able to talk to them and either make a complaint or file a complaint. If it's to another service member or to the commander. So I want to build something likened to that, where these folks can have confidence in a system that works, and there won't be any retribution because they raised a red flag and said, listen, there's a problem over here. So the ombudsman can work really well if they are not hamstrung to the administration of the DOC or being guided by the governor on what they will and will not look at. Our report.
Thank you for that. Okay, I see you all blowing up my phone and the text box on the side. The real question that everybody wants to know at this moment is, why isn't this done already? What was the pushback? And how do we avoid that going forward so that we can make this the year that Arizona passes independent oversight of corrections?
Oh, Walter, I'm going to let you take this one first.
Well, thanks for that buzz. Ever since I've been in the House, Representative Rodriguez and I have been talking about these types of issues and what is the best way to go forward to try to, like I said, look under the bed and pull up the mattress on this thing. I was approached by an organization out of DC that this particular legislation that we ran last year worked in other states. It was also a model of ATAC, also because on the oversight and transparency of it. The problem is we'll have a deal worked out with the other side of the aisle, not the aisle in Democrats, but the other side of the pond there in the Senate or other folks. And then when the bill gets on the other side, people don't want to run it, or they'll come up with stories or lies about the bill. which are outrageous. And then we ran into the problem of the DOC itself. The DOC is a department within the Arizona state executive, basically. They are not supposed to legislate or lobby for bills or legislation. That's not their role. Their role is to execute this legislation that comes out. We were running into the problem when we had folks at the DOC that were actively lobbying against some of these good pieces of legislation. And that hurts us. And then we have to take a ruled look at our caucus. I know that when we passed the first bill, that we had overwhelming support on both sides of the aisle, except for a few folks that didn't think that we needed oversight. It turns out those same folks that didn't think we need oversight were getting fundraising dollars from some of these organizations that support the current activity of the DOC. And I'm not going to say any names, but these folks know who they are. The problem is that we have to be realistic in what we're doing, and we need to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror at the end of the day and say, did we do what we're supposed to do? Did we do the right thing? And I know that Representative Rodriguez and his colleagues stand with me on this, and a number of Republicans. We just have to make sure that those folks in key positions keep their word, and so we can get these bills passed.
So folks, I agree with everything that Mr. Blackman just said, but I also want to just, again, I want to go back and talk about Parsons very quickly, because that is going to be the literal camel's nose in the tent. When Judge Silver makes the ruling that I think she's going to make, then that is going to then cause changes on down the line. So they're going to put it in, I think she's going to name a receiver. I think then folks are going to come back and going to look at the legislature and the governor to say, how do we fix this? And that's going to be the chance to take a deeper, more broad look at how DOC is run. Because it doesn't make any sense that you just go in there with blinders and you just, keep focused on the limited issue of what's going on with the medical care. Because that's automatically going to lead to other issues about staffing. It's going to lead to other issues about pay. It's going to lead to other issues about security. And then that's when we're going to need you as voters to go out and really start to use the power of your social media, the power of your emails, the power of your phone calls, to go to the key members in the Senate, the leadership in the Senate on both sides, the leadership in the House on both sides, and the members, and just ask them to do the right thing, to allow this bill to go onto the floor in the House, which I think it will. I think it'll pass again. And then the Senate is where the fight is going to take place. But I do think that Parsons matter is going to engender a lot of conversations about what needs to be done, what is going on in DOC, and how we can best address it. So it's an opportunity. Don't overlook that ruling, because that is going to be a very powerful talking point for folks to use moving into the next session.
And that is the perfect segue, because there are so many activists, new activists, and families of incarcerated folks who are on this live stream right this moment. And they want to know what they can do to be most effective in their advocacy, what works and what doesn't work to get this over the finish line.
My experience was, if groups that have lobby days at the Capitol, because the private prison industry will have its own lobbyists. The vendor industry will have its own lobbyists, and they will go and they will talk about things. But we need people to go in and to talk to the representatives and the senators in a very real, in a frank way, and to just let them know, look, this is what's happening to my family. It's not just my loved one who's incarcerated. It's our family that's being affected by this. And to let them know your struggle in just getting simple things like buying toiletries for your loved one, or buying other commissary for your loved one, or worrying when your loved one gets sick in DOC, what's going to happen to them, whether they get adequate care, whether their security is high enough, whether they're being treated fairly by the staff. The more you humanize what's going on in there, the more effective it is. But that means you have to be present in person, you have to be present online, you have to be present in writing. You just have to make your presence felt, because that's when we start to, as legislators, that's when we start to see that this isn't just a topic, it isn't just a talking point. These are people's lives that are being affected by this. And that's when people start to move on things.
Absolutely.
Look, I agree with Representative Rodriguez. We need to get more people involved. I mean, we had a lot of people involved with the earned release credit. I mean, that thing was on fire there for a while. However, it slowed at the end. However, with this particular piece of legislation, it's important. It's important that we're able to look into our prisons or any organization and account for the dollars, the taxpayer dollars that are going into that. Look, when I was in the military, we had inspector generals that would come and inspect our organizations. I used to welcome that type of feedback because what it does, it makes you a better organization. We're going to find bad pieces and bad players, bad actors in every organization. However, I mean, if I were a director, I would welcome that type of audit, that type of overwatch, because what it does, it presents that, it gives that department basically some cover in transparency, because if we see it, we can fix it. Now, if we see it and it doesn't get fixed, that's a whole different conversation. The Oversight Committee will do nothing but help the Department of Corrections. I don't even know what they feel like that they have to lose. I mean, right now, they're being sued. We are overspending or the money's not being managed properly. And I would welcome this type of legislation. Say, come in, look at what I'm doing, tell me how I can fix this. But we have to make sure that when we do find some of these issues, that we are not going after the folks that are running the system, the prisons. We got to make sure we're not doing that, because a lot of times folks don't want to, put the red flag up because they're fearful of losing their jobs. We need to make sure we provide the folks with a good environment to work in, with transparency to the public, and making sure that we're keeping our community safe by maintaining what we need to maintain in these prisons.
Absolutely. And if I could add something to that too, to both those statements, when we talk about public support for this, and it's a conversation, in this conversation that we have so often, what gets lost remarkably is the public safety element of what's going on in the Department of Corrections and how that is impacted as well. And we've had that this year. There's a direct correlation between the staffing levels at Florence South Unit and the escape that happened. And so there's a public safety element here. So it doesn't have to just be somebody that has a family member that's in the Department of Corrections or a staff member. That this internal safety is extraordinarily important and will benefit from this legislation. But moreover, there's public safety issues at play here, and additionally, public dollars at play here. So this is an issue that reaches every man, woman, and child in the state of Arizona, and it needs engagement from everybody on this issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. Total, I agree with that.
And I suppose that leads to the $1.3 billion civics question that's in the chat, that if the legislature knows the DOC is out of control or broken, then how is it that year after year we keep on seeing budget increases without those questions as to where that money is going?
So if I could lead with this really quickly. So this is the first year that we are going to be able to actually ask them direct questions about funding and where the money is going, and also being able to use the audit. We have to also understand this too, that when we fund DOC, we are also paying salaries. We're paying for health care for some of these employees that work there. If we cut that funding, then we're going to affect some of those people that work there. Now, it doesn't give them a green light to just go do what they're doing like now, but we just can't cut funding to the DOC because of that. Now, and again, if we cut funding, these folks are still in prison. And we have a situation with Locks, we had the escape in Lewis. If we're not paying these folks, and if we're not trying to fund them at appropriate levels, we're going to see more issues as we've seen in the past. And then that really becomes a public issue, a public safety issue. So we just have to fund them smart, not just give them a bunch of money and let them do what they want to do with it.
You know, what has happened is for the majority of the state's history, the operation of DOC has just been sort of put on autopilot. They come in and they'll make their presentations, and then they'll name a number, And then that number is basically, then the legislature writes a check. But what that has ended up doing is normalizing a system that is a mystery to the vast majority of people in Arizona. And quite frankly, it's a mystery to probably a lot of people who even work in that department. So what we need to do is, instead of normalizing this closed system that isn't accountable, that isn't transparent, we need to normalize transparency and accountability, because you can go to Mr. Blackman, what Mr. Blackman was touching on when he's talking about cutting staffing and cutting budgets in terms of who pay for staff and other people who work there or related to the industry or to the department. Part of being a legislator is making sure that you're writing a responsible budget. And quite frankly, there just isn't enough information right now to figure out what can be cut and what can't be cut. We can have a discussion about, if we lower the number of people who are incarcerated, that's going to realize a certain dollar savings. We can do that, but we don't know where the rest of it is going or how it's being used for the most part. So the first part of drafting a new budget, developing a new, more transparent and accountable budget process, is actually getting the sunlight in there so we can see how the whole thing works. Because you've heard the term black box. A lot of how DOC operates is a black box. It just kind of churns out the product, but nobody really knows what's going on the inside. And that's the frustration for many people in the legislature. And quite frankly, it's a scary prospect if you go to a legislator and you say, hey, would you support this cut, or would you support this reallocation? And then when they say, well, tell me why or why we shouldn't do that, the answer you don't really get a solid answer, because we don't really know the specifics. So I think that is part of the issue as well.
In this budget piece as well, beyond just staffing, which has come up several times, there's infrastructure issues extant in, I think, nearly all of the complexes, all of the state complexes in the state of Arizona. We had, potable water being contaminated down in Douglas. We've had water systems out at Perryville. We've had systems out in Florence and Iman complexes where people are going days, week at time without any potable water at all. There's the lock issue. There's just a number of the radios. When we had panels with staff members, one of the things that they brought up, the two staff members, Mindy Krasinski and Brian Radford, repeatedly was the radios that the officers use to communicate inside during the day, which are needed for security and for medical emergencies and all types of things. They have to have these communications. They don't work. There is a huge amounts of infrastructure issues. And I was looking at the Auditor General's reports that Mr. Blackman has referenced earlier, and in one of those reports for the periods of 2016 to 2019, which was the sample period, the Auditor General was looking at the reports and staffing levels in finance, and I may be misquoting this, but it was somewhere around 60% of the funding of the Department of Corrections is expended on personnel, on full-time employees and benefits and those type of things. And so the question that keeps coming up in my mind that we're going to have a reckoning when we talk about this budget is, if we have really low staff levels, if we have a huge attrition problem in these lower staff levels, we have infrastructure problems, and 60% of the budget is being allocated towards the employees that are existing there now, which is significantly understaffed. To get those staffing levels up and to get the infrastructure up to where it needs to be able to house human beings inside of our state facilities, we're going to need a significant increase in monies going to the Department of Corrections. And so what we're going to see, as we've seen over the last 4 years, from 2017 to 2019 or 2021, was we saw a 19% increase in funding go to the Department of Corrections when we were seeing a 10% decline in the population of the Arizona Department of Corrections. So there is a number of issues. And going to Mr. Rodriguez's point, the issues that we have right now is that we as taxpayers, as lawmakers, as the citizens who are paying these bills, we don't know what's broken in there. The only time that we learn about what's broken is when it blows up, when Jimmy Jenkins does a report on it, or enough people come out, or a staff member comes out and puts their career and their life literally on the line to be a whistleblower about these issues, which has happened a number of times. And so there is huge systemic problems here, and they're not going to get better anytime soon. And this budget piece is a huge issue that needs to be looked at comprehensively, and we need the truth. We need to know what's going on in there. We need to know what to fix.
Again, I want to caveat what you said there, and you hit the nail right on the head. The AG's report is going to guide us. We're having the sunset review early next month, and before we actually get into session, and those are some of the hard questions I'm going to ask is, where is this money going to? 60% are going to salaries, but you're still using swamp coolers in the building. It looks like it's something that came off the Shawshank's Redemption. Right. So it's time for us to make sure that the money is being spent properly. Now, I don't, you know, I've been out there several times to these facilities, and I've had one-on-one conversations with some of the wardens, and they generally want to do the right thing, but they are trying to fix a broken system, and so there's enough blame to go around when we're talking about DOC. It's time to stop blaming folks, and let's just fix it. And an oversight committee will do that. An oversight committee will give us that transparency of what we need when we're talking about infrastructure needs, when we're talking about personnel needs. And then we can actually see where the best place that money so we can have a good system. Makes no sense that we're running an archaic system, and we expect a different outcome when these folks get out of prison. And then we have folks that are standing on the rocks or the bully pulpit saying recidivism is high, and you know, these folks are just career criminals. It's what we're producing when we have these folks come out, and the environment is part of that. And I get some folks really, you know, they'll say to me, "Well, you're soft on crime." I'm not soft on crime. I'm pretty tough on crime, but we've got to be smart on reform. And this Overwatch bill will make us smart on the reform, because we can see what we need to reform, what's working, what doesn't work, and get rid of some of the bad apples in there if we need to.
Rodriguez, are you chiming in?
No, you know, I just think it's there's no denying it's a massive agency with a large list of known problems, and quite frankly, it's probably a lot like an iceberg. You know, you only see the tip of what's actually lying just beneath the surface of the water. It is going to take a concerted effort, a unified effort from people from all over Arizona, all walks of life, all party affiliations, to get this addressed. Mr. Blackman is entirely correct. It can't be about blame at this point, because if we get stuck in a cycle of trying to figure out who to point the finger at, I don't think things are going to get done, because, you know, nobody wants to end up holding the bag at the end of the process. And so what needs to happen is just a focus on, let's build a process to identify what we're dealing with. Let's be open about it. Let's be transparent, and then let's work on it together in a unified manner. This can't be about politics, folks, because at the end of the day, we're talking about human lives and people who are incarcerated, the operation of our criminal justice system, and its effects on down the line, the effect it has on families, our communities, our kids. You know, this department and how it conducts itself and the money that is spent in this department affects every other key quality of life issue in Arizona. It does. And if you think about it, it affects our school funding, it affects our treatment of drug and alcohol abuse, it affects our treatment of mental health. It affects what we do with folks when they get out. How are we training people? How are we dealing with adults who want to get off that track? You know, these are all, this department exists because of many other failures, but we can at least start here with this department. So let's focus on that. I agree with Mr. Blackman on that. Let's focus on solutions and not blame.
And that's the tagline that we've had here at ATAC since the inception of ATAC, is that this is a nonpartisan issue that requires a bipartisan solution, and that should not be lost, that we have a conservative and a liberal, a Republican and Democrat on this panel talking about this, and there's there's no daylight between them on this issue, and because it is an issue that requires everybody to engage on it, and it should not be politicized. And I'm extraordinarily happy that it hasn't, heretofore. This is something that needs to to be solved, and it needs to be solved as an emergency. Really, this is. I testified last year at Representative Blackman's panel that the lights were blinking red then, and since then we've had just a number of issues that have happened since then. I mean, we are really seriously need to get this solved, and so every lawmaker, every person of every political affiliation needs to come together and get this and engage on this issue for sure.
You're absolutely right.
I'm going to get into trouble by asking a question that walks right along that line, but it's coming in a few different flavors from some of our viewers. And the question is this: does part of this conversation need to also include who is going to prison and why? Are too many Arizonans behind bars? What is the right size for the Department of Corrections? And is it looking at that portion of this as important?
It clearly is. Oh, it clearly is. You know, Mr. Blackman and I have been working on earned credit release issues since the first day he and I met. I think we started talking about that just shortly after we both joined the legislature. You can't talk about the operation of a department that incarcerates, that houses people who are sentenced to prison without talking about who's in that prison and why they're in that prison. Absolutely, earned release credits are part of the reform process. Mr. Blackman touched upon this earlier. Part of the accountability process is designed to help support sentencing reform along a different path, because we need to quantify these issues. We need to quantify staffing. We need to quantify how effective the department is or isn't when it comes to rehabilitation. I think it's well documented that we have huge issues there. And we need to go back and take a look at what the state is spending on in terms of who we're sending to prison and why we're sending them to prison, right? So absolutely, that's an issue that it goes hand in hand with reform. What's the point of fixing the department if you're just going to keep forcing it to deal with these unreasonably large numbers of incarcerated persons who are being sentenced to prison for nonviolent offenses?
Yeah, I agree. We have to look at the demographic background of the folks that are in prison right now. In Arizona, we have less than 3% Black American in Arizona. However, we're taking up about 1.5% of the folks that are in our prison systems here in Arizona. If we look across the country, per capita, Arizona locks up more people than any other place in the country. So we are definitely doing something wrong there when we are locking up more people than the rest of the country. Now, of course, that has decreased because of COVID and the things I've said before. However, when things get back to normal, when life gets back to normal, you know, I would dare say we will see an increase of population in prisons, and we'll see an increase of the demographic backgrounds that we need to identify. I'm running a bill, and Representative Rodriguez, he co-sponsored this bill with me last, the data bill, so we can collect data. And that data would tell us exactly who's in prison, who's going to prison, why are they going to prison, how prosecutors are prosecuting their cases, why we have a high rate of plea bargains, so on and so forth. I'm not the attorney here, but however, those are some of the questions in that data bill that we can pull out, and we can probably fix what we are talking about right now is who is going to prison. We have to talk about that. And I know some folks don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the ethnic background of it. But if you look at across the country, 70% of the Black Americans that are in prison right now come from fatherless homes. They come from fatherless homes because those fathers are in prison. So we have to do a deep dive of this to try to fix this. So in my community, it's a real problem. It's a problem that needs to be addressed. With real legislation. Senator Tim Scott at the federal level, he's working on those issues to try to peel the onion back and figure out who's in prison and how we can really take these folks. And we don't need to be an outlier anymore in the country. Arizona, every time I have a conversation with someone across the country about prison reform, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, well, Arizona's an outlier on this. Arizona's an outlier on this. I feel like the redheaded stepchild. And I have nothing against people with red hair, but we need to become part of what's going on in 2021 instead of living in an archaic time and just throwing people in prison and not fixing the problem. So I would like to see that corrected as we move forward.
You know, it takes courage, folks. It takes courage for a state to take a hard look at itself and what it's done and how it's treated its own citizens when it comes to prison sentences. Some folks aren't comfortable with it because they start to think that, hey, you're blaming me, or you're saying that I'm a racist, or you're saying I'm this, that, or the other. That's not what this is about. This is about trying to make sure that Arizona is a state that will fit the punishment to the person and do it in an equitable and just fashion. That's what we need to get back to, right? No one's trying to say, as Mr. Blackman alluded to earlier, no one's trying to say, let's be soft on crime. What we're trying to say is, let's think very deeply about what we've done in the past that clearly hasn't worked and what we can do better, because there is better information out there about how to handle people who have committed crimes. And it doesn't always mean prison. It means a lot of different things. Punishment can mean a lot of different things. And the incarceration issue in Arizona remains a huge issue, which has never really been looked at since the passage of the truth in sentencing laws back in the early 90s. And so it's well past time for us to step into the current century. I completely agree with Mr. Blackman on that.
Well, not to radically change gears, but y'all, the attorneys have entered the chat and have some more nuanced questions for you. Specifically, they want to know about the communication between those who are incarcerated and correction officers too, and the ombudsman. How is that going to be insulated from DOC, and how can we be assured the privacy of those communications?
That is an excellent question. I do not think, Mr. Blackman, you can correct me on this, but I do not believe that the legislation that authorizes the creation goes into that level of specificity. But that would be a rulemaking activity that would be done by the administration, the Department of Corrections. I think the Arizona Department of Administration would probably have an issue with that. And then also the staff and the members of the committee would also have to have a rulemaking operation and figure out how that would actually operate. I would submit to you that it's probably a seat at that table for the Arizona Attorney General as well to be brought into that. That is a process that is not specifically lined out in the legislation, but that can be done through an administrative rulemaking process.
What I would like to see is, I would like to see the ombudsman be able to work in system and outside the system. When I say work outside the system, when a person comes with a complaint, either it be an employee or an inmate, that the first report is not to the director. The first report is someone outside of that system that's in an executive role. It could be the department director of administration. It could be a myriad of folks, so we can start to run these things down. And I say that because I come from an environment, being in the military for 21 years, that is the method we use. Commanders would have complaints against them with their service members in the same units. But that service member, when they made a complaint, they went outside of the chain of command. You'll see this now when we're talking about the sexual assaults and harassment in the military. They want to go outside the chain of command. In this situation, we have to go outside of the chain of command in DOC in order for it to work. Some folks aren't going to like that because they want to have that control. But in order for the ombudsman to work properly and for us to make these critical changes, that person has to be able to have trust and going to the ombudsman or the representative, and then that ombudsman going outside that chain of command to be able to fix the problem. Now, the rulemaking, we can make those rules outside of the DOC and based on the level of complaint that goes to the that reporting agency. Of course, an investigation, making sure that someone is not being falsely accused of something. But there's confidence in that system, and they don't have that right now. Now, some folks will tell you they have an ombudsman. That ombudsman they're doing a lot of work. However, they can't go outside the chain of command and report some of these incidents. They are having to report to their wardens or report to their bosses about the person in cell block C, and then that person and that employee, they get in trouble for it. In some cases, they'll get in trouble for reporting or be marked as a bad apple for raising a red flag. So the ombudsman has to have the opportunity to work outside of the chain of command, or this is not going to work.
Fair, fair. The next one is wow. I don't even know how I'd answer this question, but inquiring minds want to know.
Walter goes first.
No, they want to know what your number one concern is. There are so many issues with the Arizona Department of Corrections. They want to know if there was one that was that top priority, that day one ombudsman can help go outside the chain of command and fix these issues, which issue that would be and why.
Well, for me, that would be retribution, either on the employee level or the inmate. Retribution is a big deal out there. I've had people in letters, as I said at the beginning of this program, that have contacted me in my office and are scared, and they are employees, about if they raised a red flag that they are going to get fired or they're going to be chastised or what have you. So that is my priority right there, is we need to put those folks in check that are intimidating some of these folks from doing the right thing. And those folks that are doing those bad apples that are creating that type of hostile work environment for the employees, then those folks need to go home. They need to get employment elsewhere, unless they can do the right thing. But that is something that I really want to look at and that I'm focusing on, and all my legislation kind of surrounds that and as we move forward.
Yeah, for the purposes of this discussion today, I think Mr. Blackman put his finger exactly on it. And it goes to the other question that we had earlier in the discussion as well, which is how can people trust the process? So the way that you create that level of trust is to go and immediately start to address and create that environment and put in the systems into place that let people know, hey, you can come. There's not going to be you're not going to be retaliated against. You can come and talk to us. We got your back on this one. It's a safe environment, and we want to hear from you. I think that's absolutely probably the place to start, because if you can get the staff more relaxed about being open about what they think needs to be changed, and if you can reassure the inmates, the incarcerated persons there, that their grievances are going to be heard and listened to and acted upon, then you are absolutely creating an environment where both sides can sort of dial down the tension, and people can focus on just trying to get through the process and this part of their life that they're in, and try to be productive in whatever role that they have in that environment. Trust is incredibly important, and I think Mr. Blackman's point is very well taken.
Yeah. There's specific things built into this legislation as well to protect confidentiality and create a reporting mechanism that is confidential and is in the language of the prisons and the law, it's privileged communications. So there is specific language in there that allows that to happen when a incarcerated person wants to make a report to the ombudsman. There's a confidential reporting mechanism in there that allows them to get that out there. Moreover, this is one of the things too. This legislation isn't living in a vacuum. There are other examples of this legislation. The core of the legislation is constructed from research that's been done for over 30 years on best practices and evidence-based operations from the Department of Corrections from all over the country. Moreover, and it's been put into practice in other states. Most recently, Washington State. And Washington State has a system that's very similar to what we have here in Arizona. And this legislation operated, the independent ombudsman office worked really well up there. What really strengthens this legislation and makes it probably the strongest in the country is that it does take an amalgamated approach with the legislative panel that has directly impacted citizens on it, and experts and lawmakers at the legislation, and the independent ombudsperson that's external and operating independently has been discussed here. And one of those things that was really strong for us when we were looking at this legislation and giving some input on it is securing those abilities to have those reporting mechanisms, but also securing it from what we've talked about heretofore, which is political wind shifts, policy shifts, those type of things. So there's a number of tools that look at the existing working legislation from across the country where this has been applied, and then dialing it in for specific issues here in Arizona, but to address some of those other ones and to continue to strengthen those very issues that are being raised here about confidentiality, secrecy, and continued to being able to exist regardless of what's going on in the executive or what's going on in the Department of Corrections.
Look, I mean, this is a fix we can fix. When we're talking about reporting, the mechanism that we can use, something very simple like restricted or unrestricted. A restricted report means that we are not going to tell who gave us that report, but we're able to fix the problem. An unrestricted report is, yeah, that person wants everybody to know who is doing wrong, and they want people to know that they made that report. We can do this with confidentiality. We just have to have the courage to be able to get over the first hurdle and do the right thing. And I used to have a sergeant major who used to tell me, do the right thing even though no one is looking, and choose the hard right over the easy wrong. We are continuing to go down the wrong road of wrong on this issue of criminal justice reform, number one, and how we take a good look at our prisons. We have nothing to lose at this point other than making sure that we improve that environment and we make it safe for employees, for those inmates, and mostly for the community when these folks get out. If we treat those folks like animals in the inside, they are going to act like that when they get outside, and we have no one else to blame but us at the legislative body for not acting appropriately to do the right thing.
We definitely need to start normalizing the use of the tools that are outlined in the bill. Because that is going to, again, it's going to lead to a better product for us all. It's going to lead to a more stable environment for everyone, both inside and outside of the prisons. It's nothing but a positive thing. So anybody who is going to attack this type of oversight bill on the basis that it has an agenda that is designed to undermine public safety, I'll submit to you as just playing politics or trying to protect their own pocketbook because they're trying to profit from the current system. So I look forward to standing next to Mr. Blackman and standing next to all of you who are watching and be a part of this panel, trying to get this piece of legislation passed in this upcoming session.
Outstanding.
I want to ask that profit motive question so much, but I'm going to put that on the back burner for one hot second because inquiring minds want to know, what is it going to take to fix visitation? Whether it be visitation with family members, whether it be journalists having access to the facilities that is candid, open, and honest, or whether it's people who've been separated by incarceration from their family members and want to be able to access their children who are now in wards of DCS. What is it going to take to fix that?
Well, look, as a lawmaker, I even have problems getting in there doing visitations or doing health and welfare checks for some of these families that are asking me to do it. And also, I've done health and welfare checks on employees, believe it or not, that work out there. So we need to have a better system of folks being able to get out there and providing that transparency. And again, this all goes back to the Oversight Committee. The Oversight Committee can identify this problem and then come up with those solutions to fix the problem and take the solutions to the department and to the legislative body to either make legislation to make the change or they do an internal change in the chain of command in the DOC to fix those problems. But it's all going to go, it all goes back to the Oversight Committee and what they're able to look at.
You know, we've had a lot of questions. Let's start with what can be done or how can we fix? And the essence of the Oversight Committee is to start answering that question with real substantive policy proposals. Because that's where you go. We all know what the issues are. But again, we just don't know enough about how the department actually operates to give specific examples at this time, but absolutely can be done. And the committee will gather this information. Because particularly when it comes to visitation, you know, the federal system is much different than the state system when it comes to visitation, because they're much more detailed rules and regulations and pieces of federal legislation that deal with this issue. We're trying to get there now here in Arizona. There are bills that we passed the bill off of the floor this past session that dealt with visitation, placing people closest to their families if possible, giving them greater access to their children if possible. But this last session was just filled with challenges, and this next session is going to be filled with those set of challenges and even more. But again, the information is out there. We just need a conduit to that we can use to get it focused and then use to help us as legislators. And I say us, I'm not a legislator anymore, but that can help our elected representatives and senators figure out a way to draft legislation that gets to the heart of the problem.
And I think that that's a really important point when in understanding this legislation and how that board is comprised. And there was a lot of thought and consideration, and this was something that goes back several years in comprising the board that is in this legislation. It has people from every area of expertise that the Department of Correction touches. So there's obviously lawmakers on there. We want lawmakers from both chambers and from both parties on there. So those are there. There is a directly impacted male person, a directly impacted female person, a family member of somebody that has been directly impacted. But then there's also a former Department of Corrections official or prison official that's not related or tethered to the Arizona Department of Corrections that can come in, that has expertise. There is medical doctor. There's other people, experts on this panel. So it's not, so we have subject matter experts, we have personal experience experts, and we have legal law experts on this panel to work and look at those ideas. And again, I just want to reiterate that this isn't happening in a vacuum, right? And so what we want is we want to incorporate best practices and evidence-based operations into the Arizona Department of Corrections, and that's how this will happen. And we think that the way that we've comprised that panel lends to that and brings that level of expertise, experience, and knowledge to the legislative experience, to where we can come in with solutions that are not only holistic but are that are direct and are evidence-based and best practices, and the most efficacious solutions that we can have. And that's exactly why we want to do that. You don't want, a house painter making a decision on how to repair an automobile. And that's what we were thinking when we put this panel together, is we wanted the people in place that have the best information, experience, and knowledge to bring to bear in that legislative panel that's receiving all that information from the Ombudsman, to turn that around and turn that into policy and turn that around into directives as necessary to correct these issues.
I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of thought went into that. The person I was working with out of D.C., Molly Gill, she gets a lot of this credit. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with her organization. Mm-hmm. She gets a lot of this credit because she actually drilled down on who really needs to be there. And then Representative Rodriguez, he had some great ideas to put folks in there to make sure that all aspects of the population are being represented, and we're able to answer those questions.
Indeed.
Look, this is a win-win for Arizona. If we, on the Republican side, the conservative side, if we are tired of tax dollars that are not being accounted for, just going down a dark hole, this is something that we can use to have accountability of those tax dollars, because Republicans are we're real big on that. We want to save money, which is important because some of that money can go back into programming. It can go back to K-12 spending. It can go back into programs that are going to keep these folks out of prison. This is a win-win situation. The only folks that have something to lose on this are folks that really don't want this because they may have another agenda in line. And it's just too bad that that may happen. We got to get this thing fixed. This is like the Titanic, as I said. We know how it ends. The ship goes down at the end, and everybody goes down with it. And if we don't want to be the Titanic of the penal system in the nation, we had better get serious about what we are doing here in Arizona and really fix some of these problems.
Well, and to that end, there are some naysayers in the chat, and I'm wondering if y'all can help with that too. And basically the argument goes like this, that the interests that got us here in caging so many humans were in part driven by the rush to privatize, not just the prisons, but all of the services they're in. Are those interests too big? Are they too insurmountable? What can we expect this legislative session in terms of pushback? And can we defeat them? And I suppose we as the global we, because this chat is absolutely lighting up right now with so many, especially family members and directly impacted people.
Look, if we don't try, that's a guaranteed loss. Mm-hmm. The system that we have right now is normalized dysfunction, abuse, waste. And the only way to turn that around is to stand up, let your voice be heard, and go to the people who make these decisions and confront them with the reality of what's going on. Again, the Parsons evidence, the evidence that was introduced in that trial, is going to play a huge role in the future of reform in Arizona when it comes to our prisons, because it was talking about medical care, but it actually dealt with how things work in there. I mean, think about that, how they were relating to these inmates, how they were perceiving these incarcerated persons. And it showed a lack of humanity. And is that the kind of state we want to be? And those are the kind of stories that we need to start now focusing on, which is, let's look at what our state values, right? Our state likes to say that we value the opportunity to have a productive and hopeful future. But when it comes to folks who are incarcerated, that just simply isn't the case, and we know that. So can we fix this problem? Yes. Is it a huge problem? Yes. Are there folks who are making money off of the system and who benefit from the status quo? Yes. But that doesn't mean that we have to stop. And certainly, if anything, it just makes it that much more important for each one of us to stand up united together with a single voice to talk about these issues. Let's talk about normalizing a system that values people, a system that doesn't allow abuse to take place, a system that values efficiency and accountability and transparency. Those are the things we can do. I mean, certainly our state's history isn't a bright one when it comes to being on the forefront of sentencing reform or prison reform. But with people like Mr. Blackman in elected office and other people that I know, my former colleagues on both sides of the aisle, it can be done. But it is going to take each and every one of us to take up a part of that struggle and do what we can. This is an all hands on deck effort, folks. We're fighting exactly what Mr. Blackman talked about earlier. We're fighting a culture. We're fighting a prison industrial complex. We're fighting folks who seem to think that throwing more people in prison makes us all safer, which we just know that isn't true. And so the challenge is there, but we can do it. And I'm confident we can do it, but we do have to do it together.
Look, when we put together the Criminal Justice Reform Committee, Representative Rodriguez and I came together, and the first rule we made was this was not going to be a political football, and that we were going to bring to the table those issues with solutions. And I will tell you, and I'm sure that Representative Rodriguez can caveat on this, is that 90% of the bills that came out of that committee came out unanimously. 80% of the bills that came out of there that hit the floor left the floor with either a 60-0 vote or a 95% vote. So it can be done. There are just a few people that are naysayers that don't want this to go forward. So what I plan on doing, we talked a little bit, how folks, how they can get involved. Sometimes it's really hard for people to go to the Capitol because of their working lives. So I have put on my agenda for this year to make sure that I go around and conduct town halls about this very subject, to bring the information back from the field or from communities of interest or communities that are having these issues, and bring them back to the legislature and try to fix something, because that's our job to do. I know that Representative Rodriguez and I talked a little bit about this last year. Time just got away in COVID, but we have to get out there and talk to folks too and ask them, what's on your mind? What do you think we can do? And take those solutions to the table And then when it gets to the table, when these votes get passed and the bills get to the floor, folks have got, and I'm talking about legislators, they have to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. And having an oversight committee is not opening the floodgates to let everybody out of prison. Right. It is the opposite. It is making sure that we are safe as a community because we are doing the right thing by checking ourselves and checking this big department on what they're doing. So.
And I suppose that's the most important question. Folks are asking, what can they do in their private capacities to help? What do you need? What do we do?
That's a lot. Go ahead, Ms. Blackman. Go ahead. You go ahead and stop.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you just the bus again? Is that it?
You have a bigger staff than I do right now.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll let you. I'll lend them out to you. So what we can do is what we're doing right here. What you all are doing right here at ATAC, bringing awareness to the problem, bringing solutions, and having people come together to talk to their legislators, to talk on forums like this, to host town halls that Representative Rodriguez and I can go to and talk to them about what we can do as a state to fix this. So there's a myriad of things that we can do. You can come down to the Capitol again if you're in that vicinity because it is open again, and folks can come to the committee hearings. I have an open door policy to where if you call my office and you want to meet me, regardless of what district you live in, you're going to be in my office and we'll be talking about some of those issues and coming up with solutions. However, I will put this out there for the naysayers. Okay, if there's an issue, let's work it. But if you don't have a solution, I don't want to hear it. So that's just the military in me. So. Don't just come with a complaint, come with a solution.
Yes, Drill Sergeant.
Well, we would tell that to folks in our committee. Hey, so.
Folks, this issue is so important. It's about being productive. And so, yeah. And what does productive mean in terms of how we reform the Department of Corrections and improve the situation here? It starts with, as Mr. Blackman said, awareness, identify the problem, bring awareness to it, and then figure out what your strength is. Is your strength meeting with people face to face? Then take a look at the members of each of the committees, the relevant committees in the State House. You're going to talk about appropriations. You're going to talk about criminal justice reform, judiciary. In the Senate, you're going to talk about judiciary. You're going to talk about their appropriations. So you need to be very purposeful in who you're talking to. Mm-hmm. Go to them with a specific problem. Go to them with a solution, right? And let them know that you're listening to what they're doing and you're watching what they're doing, and that you are just a representative of a larger group of Arizona citizens that are standing behind you, that are looking for results and that want to see things happen. Because remember, your power as an Arizona citizen is your vote, right? Your vote and your voice. So figure those two things out. How can you link your voice to the problem, to the solution, and then let the folks know who are making the decisions that the vote is coming or it's not coming, right? It's either going to go to that person for the solution or it's going to go to their opponent for the solution. So, actions have consequences. So let's make sure that everybody understands how this works, figure out your strength, and then work towards that.
And what I've seen a lot, and I've seen it in the chat, and we saw it in the questions that came before this, and of course, going through the legislative cycle for a number of years, we've all experienced this, and which is that you get attached to legislation, and especially when you or your loved ones are going to be directly impacted by legislation, when it means whether or not your father is going to come home earlier than was expected, or your mother or your brother or sister, that has a deep emotional attachment to this legislation. And so when you go through that year after year in support of this legislation, it can callous you, and it can create apathy, and it can create discontent with the process. But that's exactly when we need to double down our efforts. We cannot become apathetic. We have to lean in on this. And by the very fact that anybody that's watching this is engaged with ATAC or any of the organizations out there that support going down to the Capitol and working on legislation, especially in the criminal justice or in this government accountability space, you know, there's a number of us out here, and this is what we do, and we want to organize you, and we want to help you understand that process, and we want to help you get your voice down to the Capitol and get to these lawmakers' ears. And so by being here, you're already engaged, but we have to also, at the same time, we have to stay positive, we have to stay engaged on our objective and move forward on that. And we can't let past losses dictate our future presence on these issues, and we have to engage. But there are a myriad of ways to engage with lawmakers and get your voice down there. And if you need that, if you don't know, you can reach out to us or there's a myriad of organizations here in Arizona that will help you with that process. And you can just walk right down to the Capitol and walk in the door. And that's the thing. We are representative democracy, meaning that these representatives represent us. They are us. This is a government of the people, for the people, by the people. And so we need to be the people and go down there and animate this.
Well, if I could just caveat to that, I tell a lot of folks in my district, I think some folks have the roles reversed. And that role, my little nephew just came in here. That role is that we work for the folks that put us in office and in those who don't put us in office. I know that Representative Rodriguez and I got slapped around a lot when we ran this criminal justice stuff, or we're saying, hey, it's the right thing to do. But what we did is we just went back up to our offices, shook it off, and and just said, hey, let's get back at it. And that's what I would tell folks. I mean, this is a marathon, particularly here in Arizona. It's not a sprint, and we have to be engaging. When we know we have a governor's race that is coming up, those are questions that you can ask some of these candidates. What are your views on criminal justice reform? What are you going to do about the DOC? We've got a candidate right here who's running for Attorney General, and I know he has a passion for fixing this. And those are questions that we can ask these folks that are running for offices, particularly governor and attorney general. What is your solution to fix this? And we already have one person right here who's been in the trenches working this, and that's how we need to move forward. So
don't get discouraged, folks. They're counting on us wearing down. They're absolutely counting on us wearing down, because that's what's always happened, is that the status quo just stands there and just waits until you get tired of banging it up against it. But this is not that issue. This is the time where the opportunity is there. We can make sure that the results come through eventually, but it is going to take a concerted effort and a sustained effort. So don't get discouraged, right? You can't win them all. You certainly are laying a foundation for future success. So thank you all for having me. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you to the other members of the panel as well. And Julie, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate y'all.
All right. Okay. So there we go. Thank you so much to this esteemed panel, Representative Blackman, former Representative Rodriguez, and Julie Gunnigle. What an incredible panel. And I think that we've heard it there, right? This is, we have to engage on this. This is, again, a nonpartisan issue, right? This isn't a Republican issue. This isn't a Democrat issue. This isn't an us and them issue. This is a we issue. This is we the people here in Arizona, and we have to engage on this. And when we're talking about the Arizona Department of Corrections, and we're talking about this lack of transparency and this lack of accountability, it has, as has been enumerated here in this conversation, such detrimental impact to every area of our lives. And as Representative Rodriguez said, and Representative Blackman said, if we are taking people in and we're sending them to the Department of Corrections and then we are treating them horribly, and what do we possibly expect on the B side of that? 95 to 96% of the people that are incarcerated in the Department of Corrections come home. They return to society. and they come home and they work and they have to re-engage here. And if we are setting them up for failure through this entire process, then what is the process there for? So we have to fix this thing. We have to get it right. We have to get it fixed now. And it cannot wait any longer, because we're going to get to a point where we're no longer, as the euphemism has been stated over and over again, the Titanic. The boat's going to sink. And if we don't get this thing fixed now, we're going to sink, and it's going to be very problematic. So we have to engage. And that doesn't just mean those of us that are here now. Go to your brother, go to your sister, go to your cousin, your mother, whomever, your neighbor, and let them know. Talk to them about this issue. Let them know $1.3 billion of their taxpayer money is going to fund a Department of Corrections right now that, because of these systemic problems, is failing just nearly every metric that's set forth on it. And so we have to fix this thing. And when you see lawmakers from both sides of the aisle, and there is no daylight between them on the need, I think that speaks volumes in and of itself. It's res ipsa loquitur, right? It speaks for itself. So we the story is here, the narrative is here, it's time to go. And so we ask you to engage with us here at the Arizonans for Transparency and Accountability in Corrections. There are other organizations that are also leaning in on this, but we will lead on this effort now and in the future. And so you will always be able to find that information here through us at ATAC, specifically on this oversight piece. Again, I want to say thank you so much to this esteemed panel. This has been incredible. Your insights on this panel are second to none, and I know that our organization has pledged to absolutely support this legislation moving through, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking this issue and being the ones to lead on this. And Representative Blackman and Representative Rodriguez, you've both led on this issue, and you're going to continue to lead on this issue. And that means everything to those of us that have been touched by this Department of Corrections and understand what's going on there. I want to wish you both great success in both of your races. I hope that you both have tremendous success there. And please, by all means, look into all the information that you've heard here tonight. Please look into both of these representatives, and also look into what Julie Gunnigle's doing, because she's always doing amazing things for everybody in this state, so on a daily basis. Thank you very much, and I want to wish you all a good night, and please visit our website, aztracco.com. Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And let me get out real quick here.